Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. Yes, this is Gamer 1745 here. We're playing United States of America with Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice. And we're going to continue. It is middle July of 1938. The one decision, we're not going to deal with stockpiles of fuel. We're going to wait a little bit to see if we need, well, we can change that. We'll do now. We may be overdoing it. I don't know. Coal is, we're not producing enough of it. So they're very, obviously we will have, as time goes on, better coal processing down here. But we're in a bit of a deficit element of it. So I figure I'm building a bunch more, or expanding the coal mines, as it were. And hello, Arno. How are you doing? Okay. Trade deal will last for a year. Trade with Soviet Union. No deal. And hello, John. How are you doing today? Okay. Manganese, that's surplus one. We're not building any armor right now. And, yeah, we could help them out. So let's go with this, and we could use a little bit of money here to help us out. Well, I'm doing very well, gentlemen. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Arno's watching over on Facebook too. Good. I'm getting messages from there. I'm glad it's working. Single engine fighter prototype has advanced, and this is the wrong button. Okay. Grayed out, but it's unlock and research these. So we're going to go with Aero Engines 1938. Well, okay, but we won't. I like to know that what I'm actually clicked on is actually being researched. Well, do all of that reinforcement. No, not that much. Right about there. Just get some reinforcements coming along. We could continue with having this level of surplus in supplies. And we are expanding our coal industry. Mentioning industry right now. Wait, what's going on here? Hilo, Hawaii massacre. The Hilo massacre was an incident that occurred on August 1st, 1938 in Hilo, Hawaii, where over 70 police officers attempted to disband 200 unarmed protesters during a strike, injuring 50 of the demonstrators in their attempts to disband the crowd. The officers tear gassed, hosed, and finally fired their riot guns, leading to 50 injuries but no deaths. Okay. Well, it's good that nobody died. This is sort of commentary on what's going on here. I don't know, and I'm viewing just what's being done. Don't know where Hilo over here. Okay, didn't know where Hilo was. Well, I'll tell you. There's one thing. There's one incorrect thing. I don't know if it's a lie. A lie isn't. A lie is an intentional mistruth. Okay. Um, when Colin Powell, who I never met or didn't know, but a family member knew very well, served together in Vietnam for a year, so knew very well. When Colin Powell went to the UN and talked about weapons of mass destruction, in Iraq, he was not lying, but he was wrong. They want to push that out as a lie. They chose to believe an Iraqi defector who I've seen a documentary on it. So an Iraqi defector who had been in and around Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction programs, and he was somebody who, shall we say, was in the know, air quotes, who would have known about the possibilities. Maybe not every secret program or everything or all the details, but was someone who could be believed, or whose information he. Okay, I'm trying to be very careful in my statements here, because you can disagree with me. That's fine. I'm not worrying about people disagreeing with me here, but I'm trying to be correct in what I'm saying. He was the type of person that would have access to the information, and he was a defector. He because, and I forget the details, but had become very anti-Saddam Hussein, and he said things verbally to the American intelligence agencies, and the American intelligence agencies believed him. I think probably multiple reasons, but one of them, I think it's confirmation bias. If you think somebody's a crook, and somebody comes up and gives you, well, see, this person did this, this, and this. Well, you already thought he was a crook, so you're going to believe the person when he tells you the things that did wrong, without any evidence, without any specific, just generally. Oh, he's always done this or this other thing, not citing a specific incident. So it was this defector who lied to the Americans, and the Americans chose to believe him. And I say chose to. I don't want to make it out to being as, they knew it was wrong. No, they just didn't. It was sometimes with the news, if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't. Well, it was the type of information they thought was the case, and so they believed it. And so Colin Powell did not lie to the UN, and I don't think he would be willing to lie to the UN in such a way. I mean, it's one thing to lie for operational secrets. Oh, we don't have any secret operators in your country, doing a thing. And of course there are, and he may know about it, but you can't let that out. But some general thing like that, I don't think he would lie knowingly, and because lie is knowingly doing it. So, and I know we jumped to Colin Powell and all this, but. So the U.S. government did not lie. They were just wrong. Someone lied to the U.S. government, and the U.S. government did not go to any efforts to independently confirm the story, the information. They didn't go and try to see if somebody else, or if there's somebody else that is not in contact with this guy would give the same story, or if they go get physical evidence. So they just chose to believe this guy, is why I'm putting it this way. And so I'm going with the idea that the U.S. government didn't lie, and people want to either, whether it's to smear the Bush administration, to smear the U.S. government, to smear the U.S., whatever, they want to go with this narrative of they lied and people died. Well, I don't think, like I said, they did not lie. But so I don't know if this person is lying or is incorrect, and I'm going on a presumption here. A presumption. Hello, Song Tung. How you doing? I'm going on a presumption that this person is incorrect here. Um, Try to disband 200 unarmed protesters during a strike. Okay. I have not been to every strike out there um, that's existed, obviously. But I've been at a couple, I've physically been at and around a couple. And I have seen television and photographs. And I've never seen an unarmed strike. They're almost always armed, the strikers. Because, see, what they normally do is they carry these things called signs, which is like a piece of cardboard with writing on it. And what is holding most of the time? A stick. Okay? So they have sticks with them that you could beat somebody over the head with them. They're normally fairly, they're not like baseball bats maybe, but they're normally sticks. So the idea that these are unarmed protesters. Now, I don't know if these protesters, prior to the police trying to break it up, were trying to commit violence. But most protesters that you feel you need to disband protesters, normally these people are physically blocking access to whatever facilities they may be. I'm not sure, occurred Hilo mass protesters. Because if they're just sort of like off in a park somewhere, being non-violent, going, hey, we don't like, gas prices. Gas prices are too high. The police aren't going to come over and break them up. They're just going to go, oh, there's protesters over there as they drive by. But if they're all standing out in front of gas stations, blocking somebody to buy gas, well, then that's what they do. So this idea of needing to put in unarmed is, I believe, like I say, I wasn't there, is incorrect. Because also a lot of Americans carry pocket knives and other things. Now, they might not have been armed with guns or machine guns or had tear gas or Molotov cocktails. I'm not saying any of that. But, so this is editorializing. So I see things like that. It's, okay. And they're here, they're going to be put down. We also had over here in, well, this right now, Portland or, this is Port Orford. Okay, that's different than Portland, Oregon. Portland, here. Yeah, I don't know. Port Ford is currently in the state of rebellion, though I would say Portland is to some degree right now in America. So yeah. Okay, Andrew Higgins has a solution. This is interesting. We're going to take a look at that. Okay. Look at, we're now neutral in Libya. We lost surplus armored HQs has advanced. Okay, armored HQs, 1938. Well, I want more Marine HQs earlier. Let's move. Oh, that's right. We have too many still. We need to get down here. Okay. Andrew Higgins has a solution. Higgins Industry, what may get there is down in New Orleans area. Okay, President and other nations such as Japan and England have been experimenting with so-called amphibious assault craft. This is 1938. They may have been. Okay, I know they do eventually, but 38 seems a bit early. These small ships are designed to land men and equipment on remote beaches with ease. Handy. With ease. Handy, no doubt. And Mr. Andrew Higgins of Higgins Industry is eager to let us trials his Eureka boats down in New Orleans. Yeah, I'm getting there. Funny name, these things. funny name, those things you call sir. Your call sir. Okay, I don't know what they're trying to be with all that. Historically, Andrew Higgins was the founder and owner of Higgins Industries, the New Orleans-based manufacturer of the Higgins boats. During World War II, General Dwight Eisenhower quoted as saying, "Andrew Higgins is the man who won the war for us. If Higgins had not designed and built those LCVPs, we never could have landed over an open beach. The whole strategy of the war would have been different." Even Adolf Hitler recognized his heroic war efforts in ship production and bitterly dubbed him the new Noah. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about Higgins boats. Higgins boats definitely had this type of landing craft here. You see with a bow ramp, that's a little command bridge you can sort of see right there. Basically, it's a somewhat armored box designed to stop, just regular machine gun bullets, basically, that one man stands in. And then down here is whether it's like Marines or soldiers going ashore, or in this model, you could put like one Sherman tank in there and get it ashore, or a couple of Jeeps or something like that. In this model of Higgins boats, and they're smaller and they're larger. Now, he also develops a tractored, I think it was him, a tractored landing craft as well, and that becomes the Marines use in the Pacific. And he's doing that, and in that it has, it's a floating landing craft, but it has big tracks to crawl up onto the beach, and across coral reefs, and things like that. Now, like I say, this is okay. I'm sure we're going to do this here. I think my understanding is that delivered to Higgins boats comes around later. The British, prior to the development, again, to my understanding, I have to look this up in this commentary, prior to the development, and they sort of mention it in here, the British come up with a very fast landing craft that is because Higgins was a civilian boat designer, commercial kind of stuff before the war, and he continues to, well, to some degree, make maybe eventually swapping over entirely to landing craft. But for a while, he just sort of has some of his standard sort of boats and civilian ones, and painting them gray and selling them to the Navy is just sort of like, hey, boats to go between your ship to the port or whatever, running around ports and whatnot. So just utility boats, if you will. Basically commercial boats that are painted gray, and you run around the harbors with for the Navy. And I know they made those for a while, continued to make those for a little while. And so you can make fast boats, but the British developed this in around 1940, because I really think Higgins is only coming up or putting these into production after the war is really getting going. The British have these really fast, lightly armored, they're actually a little bit of armor on them, landing craft that they use for their commando raids. And they continue to use these things, including on D-Day, but they're smaller than most Higgins boats. I mean, some of the Higgins boats are smaller than this. And the Japanese use a much more cruder type of landing boat that does have a front ramp, but it's fairly crude. So yeah, they've already been doing this stuff. So what I'm saying is the British should. He's just sort of taking the British design here, that existed, and enlarging it, because the British one is smaller, and I think making a hell of a lot more of them, putting them into much better production. Hello, Brady. How you doing? Hope things are good with you. Okay, landing. Yes. Okay, so we're going to landing craft flotillas, which are here. Okay, good. And that's one of the reasons I've been. It looks interesting, but these can wait. Now we're going to Ooh, 15,000 money and supplies. Yeah, I guess we can do that. It's going to be expensive, but that now unlocks all of these, which are where we could do the bow ramps and machine gun position. Good to hear. Good to hear. Like it when people are doing well. The Germans never, to my knowledge, purpose build landing craft. They definitely understand the use of them, and they mostly are converting barges, which are rather flat bottom boats, anyways, um, into landing craft. They're more, and they actually build take pre-existing barges and build bow ramps into them to to come up onto the beach. The Italians, I don't think they're ever doing anything to that scale. The Italians just don't have destroyer class advance. Okay, small warship movement. Right. Okay. So those are all 39. So what we can do is come over here and do sort of bow ramps. The Soviets, they just don't have the need or the industrial capacity to build them. So it's mainly the U.S., Britain, and that has what we would consider landing craft in one format or another. Industrial production, is that over here? 1940. Okay, that is way too far in advance to research at this time. Some things I'm quite willing to push a little early, especially if they give us a benefit, like an industrial zone. That's worth doing early. I think we'll come down here and do air. To get back before I got distracted, on we're trying to develop America here industrially. The problem, export of zinc to Bulgaria, no thank you. The problem at this time in America and industrial production is who's going to buy your product, whatever the product is. Who is going to buy your product? Whether the product is a machine tool, something that will, make toasters or, uh, make automobiles or whatever, a machine tool, or, so something that is basically what when we're, that's, I mean, I don't take these really to mean that we're doing a whole lot of laying of bricks and putting up steel beams into buildings. We're doing some of that with this, but this is as much about just building machine tools as I take this as it is about building the physical infrastructure on buildings here. Whether it's that, because if a company isn't selling its products, what does it need? More machine tools, or who's going to buy toasters because of the depression? So there just really isn't. Hello, Havak, I guess is how you pronounce that. I don't know. How you doing? And so the U.S. is really having trouble at this time because it just does not have anybody to sell anything to. The commercial CAG torpedoes, let's Um, is that no? That's okay here. 38. So let's move over to. Well, so many people are out of work. No one wants to expand their factories. If you have a factory that you can keep running because you can sell your goods, it's probably many of them, I should say, factories are operating at less than full capacity. And so it is just a situation in which everything is stagnant. There is um, industrial efficiency advance. Let's continue research. You can call, okay, Tina. Hello, Tina. And there's a lot of reason. Trying to, because I don't want to give you wrong information about what's going on at the time. And I don't have a lot of details, and I'm not trying to give you a lot of details. Okay, pause this here. Okay, we have too many diplomats, so we don't need. Oh, okay, well we're not doing anything. We have more than enough officers, so let's lock this down. Let's unlock this, and we're going to go down to about 2 officers for right now. We'll need them eventually, but we can spike this up. Espionage. Well, let's take a look at our spying. Trying to how to phrase what's going on. Who do we want to try to influence, spy on more than we're doing? Not really. I'm good for right now. So what I want to do here is come over here and just a bit because we're building up a few extra spies. Let's reduce that down. You got to understand the tax burden that is set up on major corporations and on individuals. If you're making hourly wages, in working in a coffee shop, working in some factory or something, you're not paying too heavy of taxes. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. But as you make more and more money, you're paying higher and higher percentage of taxes, up to the point that you're literally paying like 90% of the money you make at a certain level. And so, meaning if you're making like $50,000, this is incorrect information, but just generally showing it. The first, say, $10,000, you may be paying 20% tax on it. The next $40,000, you may be paying 50% of tax on it. So you look at that. So $40,000, you have $20,000 of income. Now, if you make $100,000 in a year, which is a very hell of a lot of money back then, it's the money between you're making between $50,000 and $100,000, so $50,000. On like that, let's say you're maybe paying 90% on. So if you make anything more than $50,000, these are just round numbers, you're hardly going to get anything back, because if you're going to have to, the $50,000, 90%, so you're only going to make $5,000. Okay, so if you make $50,000, you would get about what, $30,000 back, because the 10% or whatever. So it's not, a little bit more than that. So let's say $28,000, and then between $50,000 and $100,000, the max you can make is another like $5,000 if you make all of that money, because they put up, and it's more graduated than that. I've sort of stepped it harsher, but it's that kind of thing. So the more, if you start making too much money, they just start taxing it all. So there is no point. Got to understand this. There is no point in making more money because you don't get more income. It just goes to the government. So when, it's the 90%, because it goes up to like 90% tax rate. A lot of it's like 70% or whatever after whatever prices. So there is no point for anyone to try to make more money. And they do this for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is income inequality. Got to do something about income inequality. These rich people, they need to pay their fair share. I think you may have heard people talk about that in today's times as well. But they talk about income inequality. Well, what the problem is, people will then shut down and not expand or do more. And so if you're talking about a business, if you've got 10 people working for you and your factory's sort of chugging along okay, or your business, whatever, it could be a store or whatever, you're very, very reluctant to add more people to your payroll, because if you start selling more stuff, you're going to pay more taxes. So they're actually keeping business from expanding by what the government's doing. And an individual, see, this is what an individual will do with more money, is they will spend it. Now, the government will spend it too, but they spend it in a different way. And see, here's the thing. The government will spend it on relief, okay, is what it was called back then, as relief. There was a director or something like that refused check because it takes in the early 50s, it was insane. Yes, absolutely. Because it was, a lot of the stuff, Brady, was not really, some of it had been removed, but it wasn't really finally not World War, well, some of it is World War II, but most of it is the New Deal, FDR's tax burdens. It was John F. Kennedy, the Democratic president. It was the one that finally removed all of the stuff in the early 60s, before I was born, so it finally clears it off. So, there's a lot of people that don't want to earn more money, because if you start earning more money, you actually start earning less money. And so they just don't want that kind of stuff, that kind of problems. And so if your business starts to do better and starts to make more money, then you have to pay more business income tax, which means the business doesn't make as much money. And because they can't just raise the price of, because, taxes, who pays taxes? Business taxes. Who pays it? Not the company. The customer, okay, pays taxes. Oh, I know the company pays it into the government, yes, because the government collects it from the company, whether it's a sales tax or whether it's a income tax. All of that ultimately comes out of the pockets of the customer. So that you got to understand that. So if you have a product like a toaster, I just want to use a generic thing, 91% it goes up to. And I think that's just federal and not necessarily state income taxes too. So it might have got even worse than that at times. I don't know all the details, Brady, as it goes around. But so as you're going along here, he's trying to sell toasters. You might be able to sell toasters at, say, $5 a toaster, but you can't sell toasters at $6 a toaster because your customers can't afford it. So if you make too many toasters and sell too many toasters, then you have too much income. The government's going to take more of that money away, and so to balance that out, you have to raise the price of your toasters. So the government is doing everything they can to flatline the economy. And so it takes customers to get this situation going. Now, the customers that get this situation going are the wrong kind of customers. Because the customers that get this thing, I don't know how people were not up in arms and over that. Well, Brady, desperate people do desperate things. Okay. And there's a lot of propaganda going out that people, just hear the message. I don't know if there's any propaganda today. I'm sure there's not. No one's giving, follow the science type propaganda that changes every 10 minutes. But, I'm sure it's not propaganda. I'm sure that's just all truthful, good stuff. People are desperate. The depressions, the Dust Bowl, it's really hit America hard. So it just really, really, there's a really bad situation, and they make it worse. But they also, as they make it worse, they make it less of an impact on the individual in the country. So meaning all the relief, whether it's a soup kitchen that's giving out free, soup and bread to people, free, or whether it's relief payments, money, it's keeping the people fed, not necessarily keeping them housed, because like today, particularly in California, but in other places, you have, homeless. There's hobo camps all over America. People living in hobo families, not just, the hobo who rides the rails that people used to dress up as Halloween, as somebody that's sort of romantic as, the idea. And hey, people bumming around, riding the rails, checking out places, doing a few hours of work here and there, getting paid, doing stuff, odd jobs, and seeing America. That sounds sort of romantic. And for a single guy, yeah, that's sort of maybe not so terrible. No, I mean, you don't want to have a life of that, but it doesn't sound, in and of itself so terrible for a few years. But, and we see drug problems, and of course there's alcohol problems going on here. So, but they do a lot of stuff to mitigate, to make it less bad on people. And I'm sure there's going to be, people could dispute this, and I'm sure, but there's not widespread starvation in America in 1938, okay? That doesn't mean that everybody's bellies are full every day, but it's people aren't starving to death, okay? That there isn't really that sort of a situation going on. So the government in that way, actually, I think is handling it fairly well for a nation, of the scale of America. It's both federal and state governments that are doing this. That end of it's very well. It's the how to pay for it that's keeping everything down. Wouldn't it be better? Whatever happened to soup kitchens? Well, I can tell you. Soup kitchens disappear when everybody has work. Okay? And so this is where I was getting to is you don't need relief if everybody has work. Now, you go, oh, well, single mom with 3 kids. Okay, yeah. Or, hey, some, crippled person, whether crippled in the war or crippled at birth or has some other, health issues that can't work. Yeah, okay. I'm not arguing against the idea of helping people in need. But if everybody has a job, then you don't need soup kitchens. And by 1942, 1943, everybody in America had a job who wanted a job. Everybody in America had a job. They were hiring. They'd hire you because there was so many men, and very few women, but so many men going into the armed forces, and you needed Army troops here, Army troops here. For whatever, there's all kinds of reasons, whether it's a training camp or whether it's, they're using, and some of them were some black units that were building roads that had military function, building roads up in Alaska. So there's soldiers doing all kinds of work and things, not just make work, but doing a lot of military needs. Oklahoma here, I know because of my dad, it goes back to World War II. The Navy had some major bases, or at least a major base in Oklahoma for munitions storage, and it definitely was built during World War II. Why does the Navy have it in Oklahoma? It's in the center of the United States. You bring in the 5-inch gun shells from whatever factory, you put them in a base here, and then you ship them either to the Pacific or to the Atlantic. It was in the center of the United States. So you needed a Navy base with a bunch of sailors there, that were moving the ammunition around. So these are guys wearing Navy uniforms. They're in the Navy now, but they're in the middle of Oklahoma, and they may have never seen the sea because of their Great Lakes. There's forget exactly where, but there's a major Navy training base that was established up here. So they may have never seen the sea. Sailors that may have never seen the sea, never gone to the sea, are working in a Navy base in the center of the United States. So everybody has a job, and the only buddy that really has any sort of soup kitchens are soldiers or military people, and they're generally set up for soldiers in transit. As they're moving around. There's the famous Hollywood canteen that's made it into some movies, sort of an entertainment. Soldiers off duty, soldiers, outside of soldiers' bases, soldiers in transit, because they would be moved, get orders, go to someplace in New York, and with those orders, wherever they were, they could get on a train basically and ride that train for free. If they have orders that are, you're in Chicago, go to New York. And I don't know all the details of how it worked, but basically my understanding is that you didn't have to have a ticket. You just showed up at the train. I have my orders. It says I should report as soon as possible to some location in New York City or New Jersey or wherever it is. And you just got on the train. Well, how do they eat? Well, they're not necessarily, these soldiers or sailors aren't necessarily getting paid every day because they're moving around. They haven't got to their new base to set up for their new pay. Well, there are, soup kitchens, if you will, type of situations where they can just stop in and get food as they're moving around. It's free to, and these are run by the U.S.A. mainly, but other organizations as well. And so to feed people, transiting, sometimes as groups, sometimes as, individuals, getting shipped around America. So everybody is basically, we have basically 100% employment. And if there's unemployment in some particular area, there's another places out in California or wherever are screaming for workers. And so just come in, work. And for all of the workers that are actually working in the defense industry, building an airplane, there's people that are working in a coffee shop across the street, or a restaurant of some sort across the street from there, so that they feed the people that are working in the factory, or they're doing other sort of jobs that support the home front, just as in working in stores, working in whatever that is going on. So there's basically 100% employment, and so the soup kitchen disappears. And in the 50s and the 60s, the economy is going boomingly, so that most places you don't need a soup kitchen. Now, and I say most places, in that they don't need huge government programs. There are still soup kitchens that are run by charities, often religious, but not always, but charities, and things like that, that continue on. But we solve our problem. But the problem with all of that is it's the wrong type of customer. And this is why you continue with the high taxes that Brady has been mentioning. Because all of these workers are making good money, but they have nothing to spend it on. Because workers are not going and buying a machine gun and then going and buying ammo and shooting it with their money. They have all this money sitting around. They're getting paid. But they have rationing for a lot of things. Other things are just unavailable because there's no new automobiles. There are very, very few 1942 model automobiles of any of the major manufacturers. There are a few, there are a handful, because you start making them in 1941 for 1942. But with Pearl Harbor, they almost immediately shut it down at the beginning of 1942, and all the automobile manufacturers go over to war production, whether they're building trucks, building tanks, or Chrysler builds the Bofors anti-aircraft guns. They build like 40,000 of them or something during the war. Chrysler does alone, and there's at least one other manufacturer. Yeah, I live in Columbus, GA, Fort Benning, and the World War II build up here helped build Columbus and many of the towns in America. Absolutely. And so there is definitely a, for various reasons, including just to please congressmen and senators. I mean, to disperse some of this production. Some of it is because it's near, but some of it's also practical because it's near resources or near a certain ports or whatever. So instead of just building like all factories around New York, well, let's try to get 10% of New Yorkers to move somewhere else where there are new factories, whether it's still in the Northeast or out in the West. There is a distribution type stuff going on with what's happening. And so since the customers for all the products, even before America enters the war, the customers are foreign governments, you have all this pent up money that you have to suck back out of the system, or you're going to get high inflation. They don't want to have that to happen either, because if you don't ration stuff, but there's a limit to something. There's only one factory making toasters in America, and they're only producing 100 a day. Well, instead of $5, well, somebody will give you $10. Well, somebody will give you $20. I got plenty of money. I'll give you $40 for a toaster, and that creates inflation, and they want to keep that down. So there's multiple ways. Some of it is the war bonds, trying to get people to buy war bonds that will eventually be paid out with a slight profit on them, but it's also patriotic duty. They're doing all kinds of programs to suck the money out of the system while keeping the system going, and it's the wrong. So we get customers and we get the economy going, and it's the wrong type of customers. But America's sufficiently well, Chrysler doesn't go out of business after the war. It goes back from making anti-aircraft guns, goes back to making automobiles efficiently. So the workers transition, shall we say. Okay, heavy cruiser armor thickness advanced. So I'm just trying to give people a sense of, is it here? No. Of what the world is like. And maybe it's over here. Heavy cruisers. Okay, 41. Yep, stop that. And what's going on and why it's going on in America, which is different than what is happening in. Something other than I don't know. Did it not take? We've increased here. That's right. So we've increased there a bit. We can research more things. It's different than what's going on in Germany at this time, because now they have, okay, yeah, we're going to keep the 39. I want to get those better submarines researched up and going. Holding wings. Let's do that, and self-dealing tank. Now, what is different between today and this time is that we have, both from government payments and from cruiser horizontal, yeah, as well as from jobs, we have a surplus of money in the system, and a lack of production going on. that is the problem and is causing problems for us. Okay, Maytag strike. Okay, in 1938, Maytag, they are currently, at least, a major producer in washing machines, as in, well, maybe dishwashing too, but definitely laundry. Laundry washing machines and um, dryers. Provoked strikes. And I'm partially saying this, I know many of Americans know this, but I don't know overseas viewers know some of these names. Provoked strikes by the company's workers because of 10% pay cut. The company was able to beat the strike because of the intervention of 4 military companies, including a machine gun company of the 113th Cavalry Regiment, National Guard. Okay, well, here they're saying troops were brought in, but they're not saying that there was any violence used by the troops. Okay. I'm believing the basic fact that these things existed. I know I was tearing apart the one and that there wasn't, or that there were armed people of a sort there. And why do you think the company was trying to cut workers' pay by 10%? Big, greedy, fat guy smoking a cigarette who wanted more money? You really think so? I mean, it may have been, but you really think so? I mean, that's what they would be, set up to think, but probably they needed to cut costs to keep the business open. Light carrier anti-aircraft armament. Okay. 39. Other 38s are more useful. Okay, yeah, right here we can go. We can do CAD fighter focus. More useful, better efficient. Okay, let's look at it. We're at 104 negative on coal. We've got a bunch of these in progress. Some will be multiple. And these are going to give us, oh, did I really want to do that? Minnesota, Minneapolis. Mm, it's Detroit, obviously. Omaha. Nothing ever interesting happens out here, which is sort of good. Um, I know this geography because, oh, well, hey, there was an American Revolution fought along here. There was American Civil War. So when interesting things happen, I definitely pay. Okay, well, I don't. Okay, well, uh, like Minneapolis Ridge. Um, there we are. Okay, why did I? Well, I just went here, rares. Well, okay, we can continue that. Really, what I wanted to do is Coalfield, I think. We'll do 2. We have enough for now, but we're going to need more. And these will all, the coal amount will vary upon how big the underlying coal fields are. These things are silly. Belgium wants a destroyer. Well, okay, you have a destroyer, Belgium. Don't know what you're going to do with a destroyer, but hey, knock yourself out. What about the AI really thinks they need a destroyer for? Import of zinc. Let's trade. Who? Paraguay. No, thank you. Okay, motorized HQs have advanced. Nice. Create encryption machines advanced. Okay, that's probably. Yeah, we'll move that to decryption. And we can come down here and we can do use like I've sort of started to do once before. And let's hit both of these. Yes, we want this. Yes, we want this. Okay. And a bunch of all stacked up here. Okay. Um, that's all of them there. Right. Well, what we're going to do is look here and go, okay, let's send one over to Montgomery, Alabama. We can send, let's down to Savannah. Yeah, these Confederates, they need some Yankee occupation forces, of course. We can send one down to Pensacola. Okay. With those guys moving around, Mountain Cliffs, where are they located? They're up here. Okay, well, good. What I'm sort of kind of doing is looking at where I think there might be outbreaks of unpleasantness and or reducing tension where there's sort of some more industry. So down to Springfield. Okay. They don't have much in the way of reduction because we see all these guys stacked up here. Um, but at least we can spread them out. Um, attach that to the Third Army, I guess. Um, Christie. Something of it. Hey, Rhaegar. I'm doing well. How are you doing, my friend? Just happened. Let's see. Let's look at this. Okay. Okay, we have become a regional land power, and we've lost the effects of local military power. Looks like a downgrading. Yes, I don't know. And Japan has forced conquer on these guys out here. Yeah, I don't disagree that the EU is making stupid decisions. I would say their stupidest decision is importing people from outside of the EU. Um, but yeah, playing computer games. Yeah, computer games are fun. Just think how mad we would all be if we didn't have computer games to play. Bread and circuses, panic or senseis. Very, very medium. I guess it's not working on me because I'm playing computer games that make me realize things aren't working right, and complaining about it. Okay, 400. So those two just popped up, trying to warn people about things are going to hell. Pay attention. Not gonna like the way the world goes. I mean that everybody everywhere. Even those who don't like either the EU or America. The alternatives aren't going to be very good, I don't think. Venture unit, combined arms, advance, and flying boat type. Okay, let's do the flying boat type. That's grayed out. And what was infantry? Oh, combined. Okay, that's down here. Yeah, 38. We can continue with that. It's like strategy games are a great tool to delay senility and stay sharp after 30. After 30. Okay, yes, it tells me you're a bit younger, but yes. I think it's keeping me from going senile. Or maybe listening to me, you think I am senile. I don't know. I'm well over 30. He has gotten Sutaten land. Denmark. Don't know what you want to destroy her for, but I'll sell you one. Um, what is what? I know it's just some sort of weird. Hey, we have a coast here, and hey, we have a coast here. We want to build a destroyer, but why the hell? I mean, who's programming the AI and thinking that it would be good to spend money on a destroyer for Belgium, particularly, or the Danes? Now I can understand why the Belgium does want a real historically, because yeah, okay, you got a teeny little bit of coast, here and here, but that isn't really why you want it. It's because hey, you have a big colony here, and you just want to have a ship or two, an actual real ship or two to like protect your shipping that moves around. Yeah, I get that, but why in this game you would want that? Okay, naval bomber prototype. That would be grayed out. Yes. All right. What other air systems will be efficient to research? Okay, large caliber machine cannons. Right now. Yeah. Well, okay. The evil dolphins. Doing should be doing enough supplies over needs. Um, Probably do. Mountain HQs. All right. There. Um, to this view and see where is it worthy to do that. big set. Let's come over and look here at Detroit. Yeah, let's just max that out. Well, nearly. Let's just. Eventually, we're going to want to switch over to building other things than industry. So I don't want to do too much, and those are pretty big. Put simultaneously into production. Industry over here on the West Coast. Not that it really matters where it is entirely. This is there, yeah. Okay, let's push all of this up to the top. Keep us from building some of those destroyers. And how, okay, 131, yeah, good thing we are putting a lot of coal fields into expansion. All right, submarine torpedoes advance. Very good. Grayed out. Okay, we're doing pretty well in our research for submarines. Look at more aircraft systems. I'm not used to doing a lot of 4-engine stuff, but we'll continue there. We're going to do a bombing campaign against the Axis. Okay, well, let's grab that. Now, okay, that gives us this, which we're going to add that to the Mountain HQ Army. That's there so that they now have more. Let's move the HQ. I don't know that we need to keep people. It's maybe a nice training spot for the mountains up there. But yeah. Don't want some too far away, but every little bit helps. Here and save the game. Well, I think this episode has gone on long enough. Thank you for hanging out with me. If I hope if I have earned you hitting that like button, and of course, if you're new here, please subscribe. Thank you very much. See you next time for even more. Yes, more parts.